Boy said his grandpa broke a world record in kickboxing. The whole class laughed. His coach joined in. Then the gym door opened and everything changed. Before we dive in, let us know where you're watching from today. And if you like this story, don't forget to subscribe. Noah didn't like attention. He liked straight lines, quiet corners, and kicking drills that ended with clean form. No shouting, no showboating, just motion and breath and control. But this morning, attention found him anyway. It was day one of athletic week at McCullen Elementary, and the gym had been transformed into a carnival of noise posters of Olympic sprinters. Lined the walls, a plastic podium sat under the scoreboard, and Mr. Calder, the PE teacher with a whistle for a personality, was in full announcer mode today. He boomed, "We celebrate strength, speed, and stories that move us." The students clapped, some cheered, some yawned. Noah stayed quiet, sitting cross-legged in the third row, eyes down. He almost didn't speak. He almost let the spotlight pass right over him, but then called or added, "Who here wants to share something awesome about your family? Maybe your mom was a track star. Maybe your uncle ran a marathon. Let's hear it." Hands shut up, the mic passed down rows. "My dad ran cross-country in college. My sister plays volleyball for the high school. My cousin was an American ninja warrior." Almost laughter, applause, the kind that didn't hurt. Then Mia nudged Noah. "Say it," she whispered. "You told me say it." He hesitated, then raised his hand, called her, grinned. "Yes, Noah, what V you got for us?" Noah stood up, nervous but steady. His voice wasn't loud, but it didn't shake. "My grandpa holds a national record for longest undefeated streak in kickboxing, 7 years, 183 wins." Silence. Not the respectful kind the wait did just say, kind someone let out a slow, sarcastic woo-woo. Then came the snickers, then laughter, then someone shouted, "What'n we sports?" Another voice must have been against pillows, and then called her, still holding the mic. Chuckled, not a full laugh, just enough to split something invisible in Noah's chest. "That's quite the stat." "Noah, you sure it wasn't a dream, or maybe a video game leaderboard?" The gym erupted. Noah didn't move. His arm stayed by his side, stiff. His ears rang. His throat burned, but he didn't speak. He didn't defend. That would have made it worse. A kid in the back row, fake shadow bolts, air grunting. "Look out, it's knockout." Noah, even Mia, looked down, biting her lip. Called her, sensing the shift. Raise his hands. All right, let's be nice. We love big dreams, don't we?" But it was too late. The gym had already chosen its joke of the day, and it had Noah's name on it. Later that afternoon in the hallway, someone had drawn a stick figure with giant boxing gloves on the whiteboard near the gym entrance. Above it, in thick red letters, "Grandpa Co." Noah walked past it without blinking, but his fists were clenched in his pockets. In the teacher's lounge, Calder was still chuckling. Kid said, "His grandpa fought, what, 100 guys? I mean, come on, I teach 5th grade." "Not fairy tales," someone else muttered. "Hope his grandpa doesn't show up and prove you wrong." Calder snorted. "I wish, then at least that story would be worth telling." But what Mr. Calder didn't know, what none of them knew, was that someone had already clicked on the school website that morning. Someone with callous knuckles, a drawer full of medals, and a memory that hadn't faded. Chuck Norris had seen his grandson's name on the list of participants, and for the first time in years, he paused and opened that drawer by second period. It wasn't just a moment, it was a meme. Someone had drawn it in colored pencil and taped it to Noah's locker. A stick figure in oversized boxing gloves knocked out Madar by a flying waffle caption, "Grandpa taped, oh serving up L's since 1943. By lunch it had been redrawn, scanned, turned into a sticker and slapped on water bottles. Kids were quoting fake stats in the yay. Hallway 183. Imaginary wins 7 years. Undefeated in Minecraft. Noah said nothing. He didn't tear the papers down, didn't argue, didn't explain. He just moved slower, sat quieter. Let the storm pass over him, even as it soaked through everything in gym class. It got worse. Mr. Calder was running cone drills, and when Noah lagged behind, he said loud enough for the whole field to hear, "Come on, champ." Thought kickboxing royalty ran in the family that drew laughs, even a whistle from another student, then called. She added, "Let's go knock out Noah." The name stuck like a splinter under the skin. During recess, 3 older boys blocked Noah by the vending machines. One of them held a pencil like a mic-exclusive interview with the grandson of the legendary Punchosaurus Rex, sir. How does it feel to invent an entire martial arts legacy? Noah kept his eyes on the juice machine. Another voice behind him. Maybe next time he'll say Bruce Lee babysat him. They didn't push him. They didn't have to. Words hit harder when they come dressed in laughter. Back in class, Mia slid a note onto his desk. "You okay?" He didn't answer. Not because he was mad, because he didn't know anymore at home. Noah opened a school folder and stared at the page he'd once filled with stats about Chuck Norris, dates, victories, titles all printed in his nest writing. He tore it out, folded it once, then twice, then again, until it was small enough to forget he dropped in the trash can and didn't look back that night. He ate a dinner without speaking. Chuck noticed. Of course he did, but he didn't push. He just asked, "Tough day?" Noah gave a small shrug. "Did you say it out loud?" Noah paused and nodded. Chuck nodded back. Then it was a strong day. Noah looked up confused. Chuck leaned in slightly, his voice low. "Only brave people say true things in rooms that don't want to hear them." But Noah didn't feel brave. He fell hollow. The next morning, the drawing was still on his locker. Someone had added boxing gloves to the waffle in the PE office. Sir was sipping from a Gatorade bottle, retelling the moment like a stand-up comic. And then the kid just says it like it's a normal thing. "My grandpa's a world champ, I mean. Really, you can't make this stuff up." The other teacher chuckled, but the janitor didn't. He just kept sweeping near the door. Later, when everyone left, the janitor paused by Calder's desk, looked at the list of students taped there, and at one name in particular his eyes narrowed. Then he walked out, broom still in hand, and miles away in a garage filled with old gloves and older stories, Chuck Norris stood holding a cracked leather photo album. He hadn't opened it in years. But something about the silence on the other end of Noah's voice, something about how quiet the boy had become, told him. It was time. It was Thursday. The day coach called her, decided to make an example out of Noah. The gym was buzzing, half excitement, half leftover adrenaline from the 5th grade dodgeball match. Calder stood near the center circle, his whistle dangling from his lips, bouncing with every step. "All right, time for a little fun," he said, voice too loud for a mic he wasn't wearing. He clapped once. The echo snapped across the polished floor. "Let's see what our very own kickboxing royalty can do it." Heads turned, laughter cracked like gum. Noah froze. "You said your grandpa was a world champ, right?" Calder smiled, not friendly. "So you got the genes." He tossed a pair of red sparring mitts to the ground. They skidded, crossed the gym, landing right by Noah's sneakers. "Come on, Noah. Show us your stunts." Noah didn't move. A kid in the front row nudged his friend. "He's gonna go full kung fu panda." "Another bet." He does a backflip and lands in tier. Calder took a few exaggerated steps back. "Hands up, I'm kidding. It's just a demo, no pressure." His tone said otherwise. Noah bent down and picked up the gloves. They were too big. The straps hung loose, the red faded around the seams. He slid them on anyway. The gym was quiet now, but not in a good way. The kind of quiet you hear before a wrong note in a school recital. He stood in the center, feet apart. Hands up. It wasn't perfect form, but it was enough until Calder said, "Oof. Looks more like ballet than boxing." Let's all hope Grandpa didn't pass down the footwork. The gym exploded. Some kids laughed too hard. Some watched Noah's eyes. One boy, mom getting punched and spinning like a cartoon. Noah's breast stuttered. He looked down. His shoes felt like stone. Try a kick. Called. Noah hesitated, then raised one foot slowly and threw a low roundhouse across the empty space in front of him. He lost balance, stumbled. Not a fall, just a slip, but enough. Called or clapped twice. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced, "I present to you the undisputed champion of tripping over air." The laughter this time echoed, longer, meaner. Noah took off the gloves and set them down gently like they were someone else's story. He didn't deserve to hold. Then he walked back to the bleachers, sat down, and didn't look up for the rest of the class. Afterward, in the locker room, someone had drawn a chalk outline on the floor above it. Noah versus gravity, raro to one that night. Atham Noah didn't mention. Gym class didn't mention. Calder didn't mention the gloves. He just sat at the kitchen table staring at the back of a cereal, box fingers tapping softly against the wood. Chuck didn't push, he just pulled a chair beside him and sat quietly later when Noah was in bed. Chuck went to the garage. He opened the metal trunk he hadn't touched in years, inside old wraps still smelling faintly of sweat and liniment, a photo of him in 1974, arm raised, crowd roaring, and at the bottom, wrapped in cloth, a thick golden plaque with black engraved name, Charles Chuck Norris. National Kickboxing Hall of Fame, longest undefeated streak in U.S. history. Chuck stared at it, ran his thumb across the edge, then slowly placed it on a workbench. The day ended the same way it had for the last 3. Noah walked home without talking. His backpack hung low, one strap twisted, shoelaces untied, dragging against the sidewalk. No bounce, no rhythm, just tired feet on tired pavement. Chuck was waiting on the porch. He didn't wave, didn't speak, just nodded once, slow and steady as Noah passed him. Inside, dinner sat untouched. Noah sat at the table, stare at the plate and pushed peas in slow circles with his fork. Chuck leaned against the kitchen counter, arms folded. Watching, he waited until the silence settled like dust, then finally said, "Want to talk?" Noah didn't look up, just shook his head. Chuck nodded. The silence stayed. It was heavier now. Later that night, Noah sat at the foot of his bed, staring at the floor, still dressed, backpacked beside him, like it didn't want to be opened either. Chuck stood in the doorway, didn't ask. This time, just walked in, sat beside him and rested his forearms on his knees. "I used to get laughed at too," Chuck said, eyes fixed ahead. "Back when I was your age, before the belts, the trophies, I was just a skinny kid with a stutter and bad genes." Noah didn't answer, but his fingers stilled. Chuck glanced at him. "You want to tell me what happened?" Noah's voice was barely more than a whisper. "They called me Kick Boy. Coach made me stand in front of the whole gym. He made me kick. I slipped. Everyone laughed." Chuck didn't interrupt, didn't flinch. Noah continued, eyes still on the carpet. "They drew chalk outlines in the locker room, said I lost gravity. I didn't even try to stop them." His throat tightened. "Maybe I did lie. Maybe none of it mattered." Chuck turned, then really looked at him. "Is that what you think, that telling the truth and being laughed at makes it a lie?" Noah didn't answer. Chuck stood up, walked out of the room for a moment. Noah thought he'd left, but then the garage door creaked open, then the drawers, then something metallic hit wood. 15 minutes passed before Chuck came back in his hands, a heavy leather folder, edge scracked, the corners worn soft with time. He sat down gently on Noah's desk, didn't say a word, then he pulled out the first item, a yellowing newspaper clipping. The headline read, "Charles Norris wins 137 consecutive match, a new American record." Underneath it, a black and white photo. Chuck, young, sweat-soaked, hand raised in a referee's grip, his opponent slumped on the mat, next a letter embossed with a national seal on behalf of the United States Martial Arts Federation. "We are honored to induct Charles Chuck Norris into National Hall of Fame." Then a plaque brush, bronze, heavy, beautiful, in a way that had nothing to do with shine, National Kickboxing Hall of Fame. Chuck Norris, record holder, longest undefeated streak, 183 wins. And finally, a photo. Noah had never seen Chuck standing next to a young Bruce Lee, both in sparring gear, both smiling, both signed in faded marker. Noah started. He reached out slowly, like the paper might vanish. His voice cracked. "This is real." Chuck raised an eyebrow. "You think I printed this on my lunch break?" Noah gave the tiniest laugh. Then it vanished again. "Why didn't you tell anyone?" Chuck shrugged, sat back down, didn't feel like the point anymore. Fighting's about proving something, but living's about not having. To Noah looked down at the plaque. "Ken, I bring this to school." Chuck smiled almost. "You don't need to, but they don't believe me." Chuck leaned forward, elbows on his knees, just like before his voice dropped. Let me tell you something, kid. Being doubted doesn't make you wrong, and being believed doesn't make you right. The truth doesn't change just because people laugh. It waits, and when it shows up, it doesn't yell. It just walks in and looks you in the eye. Noah didn't say anything, but he didn't blink either. And that meant something downstairs in the quiet of the garage. The metal trunk still sat open inside under gloves and photos and time. There was space for one more thing, something that hadn't happened yet, but was already on its way by Friday. The joke had mutated into currency. Notebooks had KO countdown scribbled on the corners. A fifth grader named Jaden ran a betting chart out his pencil box, folded paper with names and guesses. Will no quit before Monday. How many punches did Grandpa Norris throw? 0 or -1, if Chuck was so tough. Where is he now? They circled Noah like vultures, too bored to wait for him to fall. He didn't look at them, didn't answer, didn't flinch on the outside. At lunch, someone slid a tray of green beans toward him and whispered, "For your training, champ, high protein." He pushed the tray away. A girl from another table leaned in and said to her friend, "If my grandpa was Chuck Norris, I'd change of schools too." The friend smirked. "Please, I'd delete the whole family tree." They didn't say it loud, but they said it. Loud enough in the teacher's lounge. Mr. Calder poured creamer into his coffee, chuckling. "I swear I didn't mean to go viral in my own gym," he said to a colleague, but the kid walked right into it. "I mean, kickboxing world record, what am I supposed to do? Salute him?" The other teacher laughed. "Well, now you got a legend. You'll need an autograph policy next year," called her. "Sipped at this rate, he'll drop out of PE altogether. Saves me the paperwork at recess." Mia caught up to Noah by the fence. She offered him a piece of paper folded small. He didn't take it. "I thought you should see this," she said. He finally looked. It was a print out of the betting chart. Noah's name was at the bottom next to it. 90% chance he cries during next P. Noah didn't react, but he folded the paper carefully and walked away. That evening, he sat at the kitchen table holding a pen over a half-written note to Coach Calder. "I'd like to respectfully remove myself from further activities during athletic week." He didn't finish the sentence. He stared at the paper, then crumpled it, uncrumpled it, then crumpled it again. Chuck entered quietly, wiping grease from his hands with an old towel. "Saw you working on something?" he said. Noah didn't answer. Chuck nodded toward the paper ball. "Quitting?" he asked. Noah shrugged. "It's not quitting if they never wanted you there." Chuck leaned against the counter. "What do you think? Do they want to?" Noah didn't speak, so Chuck answered for him. "They want you to break, not because of what you said, but because you said it with your head up later that night." Noah opened his closet and found the gloves. The same ones Calder had tossed at his feet. They were still too big, still too red. He put them on anyway, then looked in the mirror. No stance, no kicks, just a boy in gloves that didn't fit yet at school the next morning. Something felt different, not in the air, not in the kids in him. He walked past a betting chart, past the whispers, past a mural someone had updated with Co-King no-show, and went straight to the gym. He didn't ask. He didn't speak. He just showed up in the office. Calder was prepping for the next match when the intercom crackled. "Visitor at the front desk for Noah Norris." Calder frowned. "Visitor." He checked the clock, then stood up slowly, and outside, just beyond the double doors, a man in denim leaned against the brick wall, a thin black case under one arm and something else his eyes. Not anger, not pride, just stillness, like truth waiting to walk in. He didn't need to say who he was. He walked in slowly, like someone who had nothing left to prove and no one left to impress. A black case hung from one hand. His boots made the faintest sound against the gym floor. Each step landed like punctuation, one row at a time. The noise dropped. Snickers died. Hands stopped mid-gesture. Laughter curdled into silence. Even Calder lowered the mic. The man walked straight to center. Court stopped. Then without a word, he opened the black case. Out came a plaque, thick, polished, and undeniable. He turned it around, let the lights catch the engraving. Charles Chuck Norris, National Kickboxing Hall of Fame record, longest undefeated streak in US history, 183 wins, 7 years. Someone in the bleachers let out a breath they didn't realize they were holding. Chuck placed a plaque on the scorer's table with both hands, deliberate, precise. Then he looked up straight at Calder, no smile, no anger. Just truth. Calder swallowed hard. He moved the mic away from his mouth, then set it down completely. His usual smirk didn't follow. Chuck finally spoke, his voice low, even carried without trying. Someone here said a name like mine sounded unrealistic. A few heads turned, some sank. Someone thought legacy was just another word for exaggeration. Then he glanced at Noah. Noah didn't blink, didn't breathe. Chuck nodded at him just once, then looked back at Calder. You train their bodies, Chuck said. I hope. You also teach them what it means to keep their word, even when no one believe it. He paused, especially then. The gym stayed quiet, not awkward. Quiet rain, the kind you hear when kids realize something grown-up just happened, and it didn't come with fireworks or music or shouting. Just wait. Chuck picked up the plaque, held it. Out, not toward the crowd, but toward Noah. Noah stood, walked forward. His hands trembled a little, but he took it, held it steady behind him. The gym watched in full silence. He didn't say anything. He didn't need to. Chuck turned to leave, took 2 steps, then stopped, looked over his shoulder just for a moment. You don't have to clap for the truth, he said, but you should never laugh at it. And then he walked out the gym, stayed frozen like it didn't know how to restart itself. But in the middle of it, all a boy stood holding a piece of proof not to win, just to breathe easier. Again the gym was already humming, students in color, coded shirts filed into the bleachers. Each grade with its own island of noise balloons bobbed near the ceiling fans. A banner read Athletic Week Day 4 Demo Challenges in big block letters. At the center of it all stood Coach Calder, confident, polished, whistle around his neck like a badge of showmanship. He bounced a tennis ball in his palm, waiting for the microphone. To warm up, let's keep the energy high, folks, he called, flashing his TV smile. Today is about strength, spirit, and maybe, just maybe, a surprise or two. Noah sat alone at the edge of the 5th grade section. Same hoodie, same worn sneakers, but this time no slouch in his shoulders. His palms were sweating, though, not because of the lights, but because he didn't know if Chuck would come all week. People had talked like legacy was a punchline all week. Noah had heard the words liar, delusional, and kick faker said with laughter even now. 2 rows back, a kid whispered to another, think he brought his imaginary grandpa today. The other one giggled. Yeah, with his imaginary muscles. Noah didn't turn around, didn't flinch, but his fingers gripped the hem of his hoodie a little tighter. Calder raised the mic again. We got a few more guests lined up, some folks from the community, a local yoga instructor, and maybe even a parent or 2 brave enough to show awesome move. She glanced at the entryway. Nothing yet, he smiled anyway. Let's get started first. Up was a parent in a firefighter uniform. The crowd clapped. Then came a woman from a local jiu-jitsu school. She did a shoulder roll. Kids cheered then, a man with a lacrosse stick and too many words. Noah barely heard them. He just watched the double doors, watched the seconds, watch for the silhouette. Calder leaned into mic again, clearly enjoying himself. Okay, looks like we got one last surprise. Guest, someone who claimed to be quite the legend, laughter stir before he even finished one. Kid shouted, must be the Grandmaster. Made another, where's Kick Boy? Calder checked their list in his hand. Pause for dramatic effect, then pretend to search, said, with him confusion. H, don't see him here. Guess he got stuck in traffic on the road to reality. The gym cracked open with laughter. Calder smirked. But before he could speak again, the doors opened. The noise didn't stop immediately, but it stalled just a beat, like someone hit mute on half the room. There in the doorway stood a man in a dark denim jacket, black shirt, slacks, hands calm. This sides he didn't wave, didn't smile, just stood watching. Chuck was gone, but the silence he left behind wasn't it? Hung in the rafters, it settled between bleacher rows, it floated above the gym floor like dust. After Storm Coach Calder stood frozen at mid-court, one hand still resting awkwardly on the mic stand, the other dangling like it forgot how to be useful. His voice, so loud all week, was suddenly gone. The same kids who'd spent days laughing now stared. At their shoes, a few looked toward Noah, but not with smirks, with something quieter, something that almost looked like respect. Noah hadn't moved. He still stood at the edge of the court, both hands gripping the edges of the Hall of Fame plaque. His fingers curled slightly into the wood. He didn't smile. He didn't flex or puff his chest. He just stood, and somehow that said everything. Called or blinked, tried to find his voice, tried to reclaim the room. He cleared his throat. Let's give a big thank you to Mr. Norris for that very informative visit. It landed flat, polite claps, sparse, faint, like someone politely applauding a moment they didn't understand, but knew not to disrespect. Calder looked over at Noah again, but the boy had already turned, plaque still in hand, and walked back toward the bleachers. Every step quiet, every head turning as he passed. Later that afternoon, long after the bleachers emptied and equipment had been wheeled back into storage, Calder sat alone in his office door. Closed, lights dimmed. The mic sat unplugged beside his coffee cup. His whistle dangled still on his desk. He didn't reach for it, didn't move for a while. Then 3 knocks, not loud, measured, called. Stood opened the door. Chuck Norris was standing there, no denim jacket this time. Just a dark button, down, sleeves rolled, same steady look, same quiet presence. They stared at each other for a long beat. Noah wasn't there. There was no audience, just 2 men, a Jim, and a silence that weighed more than any dumbbell in the room. Chuck stepped inside, didn't ask for permission, didn't sit, just looked at the walls. Photos of past student athletes, tournament ribbons, team jerseys framed behind glass. Then he turned to Calder. "You be the loudest man in the room," Chuck said, voice low. "That usually means you're the one who listens the least." Calder cleared his throat, tried to fill the space with words before it closing on him. "I didn't mean anything by it," he said, hands halfway raised. "It was just a joke. The kids were laughing. I thought he was making it up." Chuck didn't blink. "You're not a comedian," he said. "You're an adult, a teacher in a room full of kids looking for permission on how to treat each other." Calder shifted his weight. "Look, I didn't know who he was. Your name, it sounded made up. It's not like he had proof. He didn't need proof. Chuck said he needed you, not to make him feel like lying would have been easier." That landed hard. Calder looked away. "You embarrassed him," Chuck continued, voice even. "Not because you didn't believe him, but because you did just enough to be afraid it might be true." Called her open his mouth to speak, then closed it. "You wanted a room, so you took it from a boy." Chuck walked slowly to the middle of the room, looked up at one of the framed jerseys, then spoke again. Softer now, but firmer. "You don't mock what you don't understand, because if you're lucky one day you'll be old enough to realize how much you never saw clearly." To begin with, Calder stared at the floor. Chuck let the silence breathe between them, then stepped toward the door. Stopped, looked back once. "You don't get to laugh at Legacy. You'll never live long enough to understand." Then he left. No slamming doors, no dramatic music, just a soft hush of shoes on gym tile and the weight of something final settling in the air. Calder stood alone. Same room, but nothing about it felt as any more. It was late when Chuck came back home. The kitchen light was still on. Noah sat at the table, a bowl of dry cereal in front of him untouched. He was wearing the same hoodie from that morning, sleeves pulled over, his hands like armor. He looked up when the door opened. Chuck didn't say anything, just walked in, nodded once and placed something on the table between them, a cloth bundle wrapped tight, old, worn at the edges. Noah stared at it, didn't move. Chuck pulled out a chair, sat down across from him, his hands folded. No explanations, no drama, just a pause that felt like breath before impact. Noah reached forward, untied the knot slowly. Inside was a belt, black frayed at the ends, crease in the middle from years of repetition. The gold embroidery on one side was almost faded. Sen 7X. Champ. It looked heavy, not in weight but in memory. He ran a finger over the edge. "Is this real?" Noah asked, barely above a whisper. Chuck nodded. It's the only one I kept. Noah blinked. You won 7 championships. Chuck nodded again and gave the other 6 away. Why? Because this one didn't need a trophy case, it needed to remind me who I was when nobody else did. Noah held it in both hands, now didn't lift it, didn't put it on, just looked at it. Chuck leaned back slightly. You don't wear that to win. He said you wear to remember what you already survived. The house was quiet outside. Crickets tried their best to fill the silence, but even they sounded hesitant. Noah finally looked up. They don't laugh anymore. Chuck raised an eyebrow. You sure? Noah gave a small shrug. Not out loud, Chuck smiled. Small, lopsided. They'll move on to someone else, that's how it works, but what matters is what sticks with you, not with them. Noah looked back down at the belt. So I shouldn't wear it. Chuck shook his head. Not yet a pause, not because you haven't earned it, but because right. Now it means more sitting there. He tapped the table gently. This belt doesn't prove anything, it just remembers everything. Noah ran his thumb across the embroidered letters Zen. Were you scared before fights? Chuck chuckled. Once, always, even when you were good, especially then. That's when people expect you to never fall. Did you ever fall? Chuck nodded slowly. Not in the ring, but outside of it all the time. And what did you do? I get back up quieter. Noah sat with that. Then asked, what if they start laughing again? Chuck paused. Then you let them. And you remember what I told you. You don't need to win the room. You just need to be able to walk through it and still be yourself. The words settled between them like smoke curling above an old fire. No heat, just memory. Chuck stood up, started to leave. Pause at the doorway. You did good. Noah looked down again at the belt. I didn't throw a punch. Chuck turned slightly. Exactly. Later that night, Chuck passed by Noah's room. The light was off, door half open. He paused in the hallway. Inside, the belt sat on Noah's desk, next to a sketchbook open to a drawing. It wasn't perfect, just a boy standing in a ring too big for him, gloves dangling at his sides, but behind him, drawn larger than life, was a figure in shadow. You couldn't see his face, but the initials on the belt said, Enough. Chuck smiled, then walked on, and the belt stayed right where it belonged. Not worn, not displayed, just known, a weight measured not in ounces, but in meaning. The kitchen light finally went out, but something else had been illuminated, something that couldn't be seen, only felt like the weight of a championship belt, like the weight of understanding. Like the weight lifted when you finally realize that some victories aren't counted by what you do, but by what you choose not to do. Monday came quiet, no banners, no challenges, just you teen students filed in with weekend yawns and folders stuffed with half-finished homework. The gym was reset, nomics, no guests, no noise, just sneakers on tile and the steady echo of forgotten drama. Except Noah hadn't forgotten, and neither had called her. The first 2 periods passed like background noise. Noah answered a math question, traded an extra eraser for a pencil cap. Even let Mia borrow his notes from Friday. It was a normal day until 3rd period. Until he opened his locker and found the note. It wasn't in an envelope, not typed, just a sheet of ruled notebook paper folded 3 times. Noah looked around. Nobody was watching. He opened it. 3 short lines written in blocky, uneven pen. Noah, I was wrong. You shouldn't have had to prove anything to us, coach. Called it, that was it. No signature flourish. No sincerely, no date, just enough. Noah stood there for a second. The hallway buzzed with other lives, conversations about lunch, video games, who said what over the weekend, but for a moment all of it blurred. He read the note again, folded it, and didn't throw it away. At recess he sat, under the shade tree by the fence. Same place he'd been mocked just a week ago. This time no one came over, not out of fear, not out of awe, just space, a kind of quiet respect. Only earned after, people watching, not break. Mia walked by, stopped, sat down beside him. You okay? Noah nodded. He left me a note. She looked over, didn't ask to read it. What did it? Say that I didn't need to prove anything. She smiled. You didn't, I know. Later that day, when Noah got home, he slipped the note into the back pocket of his sketchbook, behind the page, with the belt, behind the one with the ring, just deep enough that he'd know where it was without needing to see it. He didn't tell Chuck. Didn't mention Calder at all. Some things didn't need to be shared to be real. Some apologies weren't for show. That night Chuck noticed the belt was still on the desk. Same place. Same fold. He didn't ask. But when he turned off the light and closed the door, he paused just a second longer than usual, just to listen, just to be sure the silence meant something better now. 2 weeks later, something new appeared on the gym wall. It wasn't announced, wasn't celebrated. There was no ribbon cutting, no post on the school newsletter, no hashtag, just there between the trophy case and the old team photo from 1998, barely noticeable at first glance, a shadow box, simple wooden, no glass, inside a pair of faux black kickboxing gloves, not flashy, not new, worn at the knuckles. One of the wrist straps held together with a strip of athletic tape, a faint CN stitched into the left glove in gold thread, barely visible unless you already knew what it meant below them on a brass plate, a line of text. Legacy isn't loud, but always shows up. Noah saw it on a Tuesday. He wasn't looking for it. He was just cutting across the gym to return a stack of cones when he passed by the display and stopped. He didn't smile, didn't reach out, just stood there for a second, quieter, walked by clipboard. Under one arm he slowed when he noticed Noah staring, paused, then said softly, like he'd rehearsed it but still didn't know how it would land. We put up after school. Friday. Noah didn't respond. Calder shifted his weight, cleared his throat. It felt like the kind of story that didn't need more words. Still, Noah stayed silent. Then finally, whose idea was it? Calder hesitated. Does it matter? That was the closest either of them ever got to a full conversation about it, and maybe that was enough at lunch. That day, a 6th grader Noah barely knew walked past his table. No teasing, no laughter, just a question tossed casually over the shoulder. Hey, that really your grandpa? Noah blinked. Yeah, the boy nodded. That's cool, and kept walking. In art class, Noah started a new sketch. This one wasn't the belt or the gloves or the ring. It was just a hallway, empty, except for one shadow box on the wall and one boy walking past it. Head up that afternoon, Mia sat beside him at recess. She leaned back in the grass, arms stretched. Behind her, you look taller, she said. Maybe you're shorter. Noah replied. She smirked. They believe you now. I shrugged. They didn't have to. Still nice, though. Yeah, they sat like that for a while, neither one needing to fill the air that night. Chuck was on the porch, watching the sky bleed into 100 shades of quiet orange. Noah joined him, a glass of water. In hand, no words at first, just breeze. Then they put your gloves on the wall. Chuck raised an eyebrow. Which pair? The old ones, figures. Those were the only ones that knew what losing felt like. Noah looked at him. You lost. Chuck smiled, not in the ring, but everywhere else. Sometimes Noah nodded slowly. What does that mean? Legacy. Chuck leaned back in the chair, let the question settle, then answered, eyes on the last light of the sky. It means showing up when it would have been easier to walk away at school. The next morning, Noah passed the shadow box again. He didn't stop this time. Just glanced. A little girl from 2nd grade stood near it. Staring up, she pointed at the gloves, then at her friend. That's real. That was really his grandpa. Noah didn't say anything. He didn't have to. He just kept walking, and behind him, something stayed hanging on that wall. Not just a pair of gloves, but a reminder of belief, of quiet strength, of the kind of truth that never needed to shout. Some names don't need to be shouted. Some legacies don't need applause, and some truths, they just wait until the right moment to walk in and remind everyone that strength doesn't always look like fists or medals. Sometimes strength is a boy who didn't walk out, a grandfather who didn't need to raise his voice, and a pair of gloves that still hang on the wall, reminding us all the world may laugh at you before it listens, but when your truth finally speaks, it doesn't echo. It lands.